Okay. Hello, all. Welcome to another podcast episode on Damage for Podcast. Today, I am joined by a very special guest, very special, unique, awesome pants guest that I'm excited to talk to. His name is Danny, Nanni. Danny, say
hmm
hi.
What's going on?
Danny is a fellow game enthusiast, and so much of an enthusiast that he works for a company that makes the games. Danny, can you give us a quick rundown of your position and where you work?
Sure, I'm a associate gameplay designer for the combat team at Bungie, and I currently work on Destiny 2.
That's awesome, and we'll talk more about what that is and what it means. But it's make the guns go, make the number go up with guns, basically.
Cotton, I specifically am a an abilities designer or a gameplay designer. So
Ooh,
the three C's, camera, character, controls is what I mainly focus on. So if the player uses it or does it, that's what I focus on. So not always guns, but mostly like grenades or melees or
nice. Or
supers.
yeah, if you're a warlock, you throw the energy thing, right?
Oh, you mean, well, there's a lot of energy things that warlocks throw, but yes.
Your projectiles that they do.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I've made a lot of projectiles.
yeah. Warlock is my favorite class. We'll get in.
Hey,
We'll get.
congrats.
Yeah.
You win. The right answer.
Is it really, Danny? Is that the right answer? As the
Well, it's
bench?
my favorite.
It
I
is.
guess I'm not supposed to take favorites, actually. Sorry.
Yeah, you're not. You're supposed to be neutral in the stance. They're all great
Yeah.
classes, and you should play them
hmm
all very long times.
Correct.
Yeah. But no, I've loved Warlock since the first one. And then when I did play a lot of Destiny 2, I was a Warlock for sure.
hmm
Talking to you today, I'm promising you that I'm gonna play the new expansion when it comes out. So,
Oh, yeah. Final shape is
yeah.
June 4th.
Yep.
hmm
So just we'll talk more Destiny, or I'll talk more Destiny, probably in June. But anyway, we are here today to just talk about video games, and this kind of came about in a really funny way, sort of kind of funny. So I know Danny's wife, Brittany. We both
hmm
went to SUNY Purchase together, and I don't know, we had some kind of conversation like maybe a year ago or something, or I don't even know. To be honest, I don't even remember when. And she was like, "Oh yeah, we Danny got a job with Bungie," and of course me, I was like, "That's really cool. That's very cool. I love Bungie." Um, and then forgot about it. And then I was and then I was doing this Substack and this podcast thing, and I was like talking about video games, and then like I was like, oh my God, I talk about video games all the time, but don't really have like a good sense of video game development, or like anybody super close that I could just kind of talk to or have them talk to me about gameplay development. And I was like, oh wait, Brittany's husband, Danny. I was like, maybe he
hmm
would be interested or curious. And I kind of knew it was kind of like a long shot because, Bungie's a big corporation, and obviously, like, I wasn't sure if he could come on and talk, but we made it happen, and I'm really excited. Just to kind of like you said before we started talking, but like it can feel kind of, games can feel kind of impenetrable how they're made, and I think it's really cool to be like, this is a thing that happens to make you like when you put the control in your hand and move the thing, this is how that kind of came about. And I think that's like a really awesome thing because I kind of look at video games more from like I like storytelling and things
hmm
like that, um and sort of the technical side of it is hard for me to wrap my head around.
Sure.
Um you know like in my profession, like books, like I know the every point of existence of a book. I know how it's made. I know the end product, the end user of that product. So it's a really easy sell for me as a thing that I like. But games, on the other hand, I really enjoy them as their final product, but I kind of don't really have a good sense of development. And I've really tried to, look into that as much as I can. And most of the development that I was fascinated with ended up being like the early id days, of course, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like the early, all that stuff I think is really fascinating. So, and in modern game development seems really big, right? It seems like a big thing that's hard to, it isn't like 12 guys in a room anymore. So
No, it's 12 people on a Teams call. No, No, I hear you. It's yeah, and books do have a similar life cycle too. Like, the last 10% is the hardest. Um, the last 10% of making a thing is really the hardest part, and games are no exception to that rule.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And yeah, I mean, and just like, we both sell things or help make sell things that are in the media business
Hmm.
and a form of entertainment that is like really fun to be in, to work in, because you're like making a really enjoyable product and you're doing it very seriously. Um so we'll get into more of that and talk about Danny, like how he got to where he is and all of that, which will be really exciting. But first I kind of just wanted to just talk to you, Danny, about what you've been playing.
Hmm.
We can talk about Destiny, but I don't know if there's anything outside of that. When you get home, if you still keep playing Destiny, you want to play something else. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
you start off, Danny. You kick it off. Tell me what you've been
sure.
playing.
Well, I mean, I do play a lot of Destiny actually. I played a lot of Destiny for uh a long time before I worked there.
Hmm.
And it's amazing that I still feel the draw to turn on the game after work. I've been at Bungie nearly 3 years. And actually got my job offer 3 years ago, March 31st.
Hell yeah.
So it'll be my first job offer with them. So, but yeah, so I still play a lot. But I'm also I'm a really big fan of handheld gaming. I'm a huge that's like my first love and my true foundation in gaming is handhelds, and um means the Switch is great too because I'm a big Switch fan. But
Hmm.
lately I've been collecting so I'm a big fan of this series called Rune Factory.
Uh-huh.
It's like Harvest Moon with combat.
Yeah.
Um and it was made by the same company that made Harvest Moon, and they were on the DS originally, and the Rune Factory 3 special edition was put out for Switch. Rune Factory 4 special edition was put out for Switch, and then Rune Factory 5 was made for Switch. And so I was actually I played them before 3 and 4, but I played 5 and was like, oh yeah, I really also love nostalgia of the older ones. So I've actually been playing them backwards. So I finished Rune Factory 4 special not too long ago, sometime late last year, and Rune Factory 3 special I just picked up, came in the mail the other day, and I've been playing uh been playing that, which is, I know, weird. Like, I know it's weird for a Destiny developer to be like, I play this farming simulation game with combat, but I spend a lot of time shooting aliens as well. It's just that, like, I also want to farm my crops while also raising cattle. You know
I
what I'm saying?
mean, I mean, Destiny's like farming weapons, so.
Yeah, I guess I'm just addicted to the grind.
Yeah, like those early days of Destiny, like Destiny 1 when you had to grind faction rep. Those were
Yeah,
those were the days, baby.
yeah, Dead Orbit.
Yeah.
Dead Orbit. Always been a Dead Orbit representative. I just also aligned with their philosophy of just like, yeah, fuck it, let's just leave.
Yeah,
Um, but uh, yeah, and also I'm a big Pokemon fan, so I play a lot of Pokemon all the time.
nice.
I basically uh Brittany actually, for my birthday, which is upcoming, Brittany got me a little, like one of the emulation devices so I could back up all the hard copies of games I have, because I also collect handheld carts, and so I have um like all my carts backed up, and I've been playing through Pokemon Soul Silver again. um
We won't tell Nintendo. Nintendo can't listen to
oh
this.
no, it's, I mean, like, trust me, if you didn't think I have my hard copy.
They're gonna come. They put you in prison. They put like some guy in prison, I think, for some sort of. I forget what that story is. I'll link it. But it was like some
I
crazy.
don't actually know.
Yeah, it was like some crazy story where like Nintendo went after this guy who was like doing some crazy, like really wild emulation stuff, and they just like threw him in prison for like 50 years or
Oh,
something.
that's crazy. I
I
don't know.
know.
I mean, I have so I you can't see it, but I showed you the picture. Behind me are like
Hmm.
a bunch of my carts
Yeah.
on the shelf, and there's a proud but actually, I got, maybe, I don't know if you didn't know this when I sent you the picture, but on that shelf, on the white shelves, it's actually an order of importance. It's a memorial for me to remind myself why I make games.
Love it. You'll
And
see
the
that
top
picture
shelf
in the
is,
post, by the way.
yeah, yeah, you could show it. The top
Yeah.
shelf, the white shelves, is all Pokemon stuff. Pokemon is just dearly important to me. And it's the top, like everything that is mildly expensive is up on that shelf. The second shelf has a is more it's the other things that are super important to me as a game developer. It's Destiny. You have Destiny 1.
Mm-hmm.
My first shipped pin that you get for when you're a developer, they give you these little pins on release. And I have one, my first one, and then there's Zelda, because Legend of Zelda and then Final Fantasy. Those two franchises, along with Destiny with Pokemon, are like that's if you had to put me in a nutshell, those are the things I'm like just ambiently playing one of those a game from that franchise just like all the time.
That's amazing.
So
Look. Are you excited for the new Pokemon that they announced?
Uh, you mean the Pokemon ZA
Yeah, something like that, right?
or
That was
ZA? I don't know. I can't imagine it's called ZA, but I would imagine it's ZA. I mean, unless it's Pokemon Pizza, which I'd be into. But
Pokemon Pizza.
yeah, I'm happy. So that team too, the Pokemon Legends team is like a different team
Right.
internally, and so I'm happy to see them take a second crack at the formula. I think the first one came out great, but there's a little um definitely felt like a first iteration, and I think that a second iteration, and I loved it, and I think a second iteration, you always do better on your second iteration.
Sure.
So
And was that wait, was that first one on the 3DS or the DS? Or am I
the
or am I making
for
that up?
Pokemon Legends was Switch.
Oh, okay, got it, got it. All
Yeah.
right. Cool. Yeah, Pokemon was they just made that big announcement a couple weeks ago.
hmm hmm
Have you played Power World? Speaking
I
of Poke
have, I
speaking of
have,
Pokemon like
I have tried. The guns part confused me. I thought, you would think like, oh, Destiny dev and Pokemon fan,
I
like
mean
this
it's
would,
made for Danny.
yeah. It was definitely so. It also came out at a time where I was just intensely playing, trying to get through Final Fantasy 16 before Rebirth,
Oh
and
yeah.
which spoiler, I did not. Um, I'm still working through 16. But yeah, so I didn't spend as much time with it as I would have liked, but I really they have this private server stuff. I really wanted to get into the private server stuff, but I didn't
Uh-huh.
end up doing that. Maybe I'll go back.
Yeah, I tried it out for sure. I think it's pretty cool. I don't know, like the survival stuff is just a really hard game design for me for some reason. My brain has a really hard time with it.
Because you're surviving the world all day long. I also too have a hard time with survival games just because like it's hard to survive in
Yeah.
the world now, like I don't want to go home and do it, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's
I'm
it's
doing it
tough.
every day. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And
but
you're in
be
New York, right? So it's like in the city. I remember I when I used to work down, it's tough.
yeah, well, I'm along Long Island, so it's not
Okay,
as brutal, but it's expensive.
that's
So
true.
there's that. But um yeah, I mean people definitely like that genre. It's just a genre that never took off for me. Like I just don't just doesn't work for me.
No, I feel you. Makes
Also
sense.
also if you hear like water like running in the back like a shower, that's actually just the rain hitting my window because we're having a wild storm here right now and I can
Oh,
hear it in my headphones.
I'm jealous. Out here in Seattle area, we have the typical. I'm gonna say this about Seattle. So it's beautiful. I've
Right?
never, as being, I don't even have a passport. I've never really left the East Coast or really the tri-state area, New York,
Mm.
where I'm from. And when I came out here, I was like, holy shit, it smells different. The Seattle area is beautiful, but I understand now why the Twilight movie had that blue filter on it. Like, it's definitely exaggerated in the movie, but it totally makes sense. It gets blue here. It's weird.
That is weird.
It's weird, but it does get blue. And today is one of those days where when the sun starts to set, it's going to have a little bit of a blue hue to it. You can tell.
Man, oh man. Anything else you've been playing, collecting, anything like that?
Um, I mean, I was in there with everyone for Helldivers,
Oh
which
yeah,
was a
did you
ton of fun.
yeah, that game I don't so okay, so just for warrant so I have an Xbox Series X. I don't have a
Mm,
PlayStation 5 yet. I might at some point. I have a Switch and I don't have I have an iMac. I don't have a gaming PC. So I'm pretty casual like gamer.
that's cool.
I wouldn't say I'm a casual gamer. I mean, I spend a lot of time playing games. I just don't have like a crazy setup or anything. So
Sure.
I wanted to play Helldivers 2 very, very badly because that game looks fun.
Yeah, it is. Live service games not being like open platform or having them be platform exclusive is like not something I am used to, but
Mm-hmm.
it's working out for Helldivers. But it would be cool. I know that there were a lot of there was a lot of talk online about getting Xbox players in on the Helldivers game. I don't yeah, I have no idea. But it has been fun, and if you do get a chance to play it on PlayStation, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, I might get myself a PlayStation when that newer model comes out, though I don't really see the point of it exactly just yet, but maybe when they got the newer model out, I might just snag it.
Mm, hmm
Um, because games aren't that they don't make games that need to be that fast yet, kinda. I don't know. I mean,
I I'm just saying the difference between I remember when I swapped over to the SSD for loading Destiny,
mhm.
just booting up the menu from Destiny on a spin drive versus Destiny on an SSD. I was like, "Oh,
Oh, it's got
okay.
it's snappy. It's very snappy.
Oh, I can change my weapon in between rounds now. This is great."
It's a game changer, son. Um, cool. Yeah, I'd like to get me on some of that Helldiver stuff and help with democracy, whatever they be
Yeah,
saying.
spread it yeah, the tongue-in-cheek world of uh I'm blanking on the name of the franchise. Why am I blanking?
Starship Troopers.
Yeah, you go. I'm
Yep.
like, I was watching The Expanse the other night, and I'm like, just my brain is like stuck in The Expanse, and I'm like,
Nice.
no. Well, I'm a huge. Well, listen, I'm gonna plug The Expanse. You should watch The Expanse. You should read The Expanse. The Expanse is perfect.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, well, Expanse is I that is my publisher. So
oh shit! Hey, listen. Sorry. Look, I'm just saying. one of one of the best. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but one of the best executed landings, both like like they stuck the landing for both the show and the end of the books. Just
Nice.
incredible work all around by everyone involved with that franchise. So kudos.
Yeah, so I read Leviathan Wakes and really loved it. And then just never followed up on what there's like six more or something, I think.
There is 9 total.
There's nine total. Um, so I should probably do that at some point. Although the authors have a new book coming out this summer. It's
What?
called
Okay,
yeah, they got a so it's called Mercy of Gods, and it's a brand new series they're doing. It's a volume one, nothing to do with the Expanse.
that's cool. I'm
Um,
following them wherever they go.
yep.
They're incredible. They're a pair. Um,
Yes. Yes.
and one of them has all he writes a high fantasy series. I'm blanking on the name. I just read book 1 last year.
Hmm.
Um, and it was incredible. They are just incredible. I just the talent that they got. I wish I had a fraction of it in my pinky. Just like they are so good.
They seem like a power duo for sure.
Yeah.
Proud of them. That's right. Repping orbit titles. That's me, baby. That's the shit. Let's go. Um, cool. Anything else?
No, I think that's where I'm at with what I'm currently doing outside of work.
Out of the shooty.
Well, I mean, I'm not playing this game, but so Kingdom Hearts is also important to me.
Okay, talk Kingdom Hearts. Talk about Keyblades.
Yeah, okay, well, it's a list. Keyblade.
Tell
Um,
me about Keyblades, buddy.
so the thing I think, okay, all right, this is gonna sound, I don't want to sound preachy, but the
Here
thing
we
I
go.
think it's important about Kingdom Hearts, and it's also a reason I think I've attached to Final Fantasy, is that it feels authentic. Like it's weird, it's memey, it's like, people are like, what is this? Like Donald Duck slinging magic with
Hell yeah.
a 15-year-old kid using a blunt metal instrument to beat the crap out of things.
Yeah, man.
Um,
Video games.
it's but it always felt authentic. Like it felt like someone had a vision and they executed on that vision.
Hmm.
Um, and I think I connect with authenticity, and like Tetsuya Nomura, he's sort of like a mad scientist genius. And I feel like everything he does is like, I want to do it this way, so I'm going to do it. And they let him. And I think that's so, but Kingdom Hearts is also important to me. I had like me and my best friend Tim, we were just replaying. We were going to try and go through all of it. This was back in January. We would both get off of work and then just like we made it through like 4 different Kingdom Hearts games. And I've always wanted to do a cover of a mashup cover of Dearly Beloved, the main menu theme,
Mm-hmm.
and Hikari, which is the orchestral version of Simple and Clean by Utada Hikaru. And like they don't really match together at all. They're not in the same key, BPM, nothing, like not even the same feeling, like emotional feeling. But I've always like there's this. So anyway, I've been working on a cover of combining them, and I just heard the first mix back from the producer the other night, and coming together great actually. I'm very excited, but Kingdom Hearts has always been like I've always wanted to add to the pantheon of Kingdom Hearts in some way. And
Mm-hmm.
the music scene for Kingdom Hearts is huge. There's a huge community of musicians that work on like arranging or remixing or just doing their own spin on Kingdom Hearts music because
Mm-hmm.
it's just a Yoko Shimura is just like an iconic figure in the industry, and so I've always wanted to contribute to that pantheon, and uh it'll be out soon, but I'm very excited.
It'll be out. You're gonna be dropping that in. Where are you gonna be putting that?
It's going to be on Spotify, Apple Music,
Ooh.
not sure where else. Yeah, me and Brittany released like a little synthwave lo-fi EP back in 2020, and it was a lot of fun, and so we're doing it again. Well, I'm doing the cover, and then we are working on EP number two. um all just we've been working on it since 2020, but me getting the job at Bungie in 21 and then moving out here has been disruptive to say the least.
What? No. No, what are you talking about, dude?
Yeah, never leaving New York and moving 2,800 miles is obviously disruptive.
Yeah. Well, if I'm gonna go anywhere, I might as well just go to the entire other side of the
Don't sound like my parents, okay? I'm kidding.
How could you leave us, Danny? Um, Danny, where did you grow up in New York?
I grew up in New Windsor. It's a suburb of Newburgh,
Okay.
right on the Hudson River.
Yeah.
About I don't know. I think maybe it was like 60 miles north of downtown Manhattan.
Yeah. 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 No. Yeah.
Hmm.
I know that all that stuff. That's great. Also we'll have to get the link to that lo-fi album.
Oh yeah, I can get you
Yeah, we'll just put that in the show notes. Do you
that.
think do you think that this mix of this mashup that you're doing will be done by the time this goes out?
The mix will be done. Will be released. No, because
Ah,
I there's an art director from another studio, another like indie double A studio that does phenomenal work. I haven't posted anything about it yet, but when it so I'm not gonna it's not done or anything, so I'm not gonna out him yet.
all right.
But when it's done, I'll post about it. But he does phenomenal pixel artwork, and we've been working on the album art, and it's gonna have some motion to it for the video and stuff. And um, so that's taking longer. That actually takes longer than the song. Um,
Sounds
so
about
because
right.
so it'll be sometime I'm hoping June, but
Okay.
we'll see. We'll see.
Just in time for the Destiny
Destiny 2 Final Shape, June 4th. Yep.
crossover event of the season.
Oh man, look, I don't I'm also like I'm one of those problem children at work where it's like anytime I can insert myself into the process that is not my discipline, I'm like, oh, you need voice acting? Can I do that? And they're like, no, you don't do that. Please
Can I
stop. I'm
can
like,
I
can
do
I do the
it?
music? And they're like, no, you don't do that. Please stop. I'm like, okay, fine.
Can I say there's a wizard on the moon, please?
I I'm dying to get my voice in the game.
Well,
So
who do we talk to? How do we make that happen, Danny?
uh
Who should I call?
I've called everyone you could call. I do so I think the reason I'm not getting the call up to the major leagues is because in a couple of meetings the Drifter is a character in Destiny, and
Yes.
I sometimes do an impression of him that's not very good, and I think that sort of
Oh, rubbed everybody the wrong way.
salted the grounds,
Yeah.
you know,
Like
which is
get this guy back working on Warlock
yeah,
projectile firing.
yeah. So I didn't quite get it, but I'll work on my reel.
Well, I look forward to that when I can bring you on here and talk about your
My
extensive.
transition to voice acting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be doing like dubs for anime and everything. You
I
never
phew,
that's where it just goes, man. That's what you do.
I would be honored.
That would be great. Good money in that if you keep at it. I think I don't
I
know.
mean, unfortunately though, they're doing the last arc of Bleach, which would be my like if like I'm a huge
It's
Bleach fan. I look,
yeah.
that's people can love Naruto. I love Naruto. People can love Dragon Ball. I love Dragon Ball, but Bleach for me, Bleach is where it's at. Listen, I love Bleach. Just
So
the
I watched that new arc, like the first season, whatever you want to say of it,
core,
yeah,
the core, yeah,
is awesome.
yeah.
And the animation is amazing.
I'm,
And
whew.
I what I like about it though is that they like made it look like Bleach in 2023 or
Hmm.
whatever it first came out. Um, but it has like that old feeling to the animation style, but yet it's like obviously like done with a lot of money and
Yep,
like looks really fresh.
yep.
Just super cool and very a tighter story than obviously like the old Bleach show. It feels a lot tighter in my opinion. I don't know. You're the Bleach guy. You would know. But
No, it looks incredible.
yeah,
We
it
couldn't be
does it.
happier with it.
Yeah, and is the story is this? Am I saying does the story is this definitely far more like concise than say the old Bleach show?
Um, well, they did some editing from the manga version to make it more concise.
Got it.
But yeah, I think it feels like it has the pacing of more modern anime too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like the anime industry has just changed. So like the presentation of anime has changed over time, and so
Mm-hmm.
I think like that's why sometimes it's harder to watch older anime too. Just because like our attention spans are different,
Yeah.
the things we value are different, and I
Mm-hmm.
think yeah, I think the new animation for Bleach, 1,000 Year Blood War, or whatever, like does yeah, I think does a good job of being like yeah, what it would what should a Bleach series be in this this
Yeah.
decade?
Bankai.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, buddy. So I'll talk about what I've been playing. So by the time this comes out, I will have already spoken to Mitch about it, but I'll just say that I've replayed The Darkness 1 and 2.
Hmm.
Which
I remember those.
those are yeah. So kind of I mean, I really like those games and I remember liking them when they came out. Darkness 1 I think that was 2007.
Hmm.
Darkness 2 is 2012, I think. Um both developed by both published by 2K. First one being developed by Starbreeze, the second one being developed by Digital Extremes. Two very different.
Warframe develops. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and but I mean, not even just Warframe, but they did Unreal. Like Digital Extremes did like OG video games, too. So,
Hmm.
two very different developers. Like Starbreeze, they did Syndicate, and then recently did the Payday 2 and 3. So just two very different developers with a different approach to the source material, and I think they're both really great games, rough games, but really great games in how they approach the subject material or the source material and the way,
Hmm.
like the first one's a little more like you explore a little more, and then the second one's way more like arcadey shoot, kill everything on the screen kind of game.
Sure.
But I really appreciate those games for what they not only they do, but they try to do. They're just interesting to me.
Hmm.
I think everybody played the first Darkness when it came out because it was like 2007 and it was like a year after the Xbox 360 came out, I think. So a lot of people are playing that one. And two, I don't think two sold very well. I think what ended up happening is that Darkness 2 didn't sell very well. And 2K decided to put more money into Borderlands 2 at the time. So, um,
Sure.
and then yeah, Digital Extremes went on to do Warframe, which they kind of ripped their own style from that game called Dark Sector, which they did. I don't know if you remember Dark Sector.
I very much remember Dark Sector.
So
Yes.
so they took a lot of the stuff they threw in Dark Sector and then they made Warframe, which Warframe is an incredibly successful live service game. Like it's like
Yeah.
I haven't played it probably
Older than
since
Destiny.
yeah, older than Destiny. Haven't played it probably since it came out, but from what I've seen and heard about it, looks very different and people seem to very much enjoy it still. So that's
Yeah.
great. Good for them.
Hmm.
But yeah, but we're gonna be doing sort of a Darkness 1 and 2 retrospective. That's already probably you can listen to that now, right now. By the time you hear this, you can listen to it now. Um, but those are cool games. Um, Yeah, and the my latest obsession is Lies of P, which
The
it,
Pinocchio game,
the Souls
sort
like
of.
yeah, the Souls like Pinocchio game. Um this one kind of surprised me because I wouldn't say that I have a uh like I think Souls games are cool. I really liked Bloodborne, but I don't think I have like the same appreciation that like those people who like that's like a really strong following for like the Dark Souls games and like Elden
Mm-hmm.
Ring.
Mm-hmm.
Um so I only tried out Lies of P because it came out back in September. It's developed by Round 8 and published by Neowitz Games, and it's Korean. Um and it hit Game Pass back in September. I didn't play it, but I heard a lot of good things. And then just sort of like a week and a half ago, I was just like, let me just download it and just try it out. And then I'm now been obsessed with it. I think I've put like 40 hours into it already. Um, I really, it's a very good Souls-like experience, very well polished, crafted. It doesn't try to do anything super new. Like there's some new mechanics they throw in there where you have like an arm that can do like fire or electric damage or can shoot a projectile or something like that that you can kind of combo with your sword, which of course you can have like a really like a big heavier set thing and or a smaller faster thing. um and yeah, like if you get hit two times by just your basic enemy, you will be close to death or dead. And crazy big boss fights with different phases, and it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I really love it. Like those games are very rewarding. um because they encourage discoverability, they encourage repeated attempts. And there's nothing as satisfying as approaching like an enemy or a problem over and over again and learning from it each time, only to best that opponent like on your fifth try. Um, and I think I today actually I played it for like 4 hours today. I fought one of the harder bosses in the game, which is the King of Puppets, Romeo, and he has like a two-phase part, and the second part is just like he comes at you uh incredibly aggressively. Um, and so you're doing a lot of blocking, and it's tough. It's really tough. And I was really like kind of banging my head against the wall trying to be like, how do I just stop? And I just finally figured it out. Got the guard, the blocking down to a rhythm, and then just kind of took chunks away from him and then beat him. And it was great, great feeling.
Well,
Um,
congratulations. That's good.
thanks, Dan. You need to
The
hear
the
that.
the point of the game, the
Yeah,
adversity and overcoming it.
if only. And if we apply that Lies of P logic to life, it's sort of the same thing.
So there's not someone on the other end of a microphone saying congratulations.
Hmm. Never. And it's just me sitting in my room looking at the screen as I collect the items from the dude I just wiped. So it was pretty good. I highly recommend it. I mean, yes, it is. It is. The story is a dark imagining a sort of kind of a Pinocchio, where like this world, this Victorian, this dark Victorian-esque like world, is overrun by automatons, and there's also like this like awful plague that's affecting the regular people. And you play as a Pinocchio who's sort of like half human and half robot.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and the story is just about him like finding humanity in this like awful dark place. It was really funny because the developer said, or the lead designer, he was like, we wanted to use Pinocchio so we'd hit like a wider audience, which I thought was really funny. Because like I don't know like if I just I like the I guess I mean maybe that sold people on it that it was Pinocchio. I just think that it's a good game no matter what kind of skin you threw on it. But
Mm-hmm.
the game is the game no matter how it looks. Like the mechanics work the same. So it's pretty funny that they were like, yeah, we're gonna really lean on the Pinocchio idea and see where that gets us. I mean, it's so you can maybe help me with this a little bit because um they sold 1 million units in a month. From September to October, they sold 1 million units.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that means anymore, right? Like in
Means very good.
yeah, that does mean very good. I assume that means very good. But like
Mm-hmm.
say like in 2005, when something moved 1 million units, I don't think any video game in 2005 moved a million units in 1 month. Maybe Halo.
Did GTA launch that year? No, I mean, yeah, no, I mean, games did. Yeah, Halo would
Yeah.
have done it. Yeah,
Yeah, Halo 2,
absolutely.
I guess so, yeah. But that, I mean, those are like really, really big games, and this is like Lies of P. I wouldn't say it's not a big game, but it's definitely like it's not coming. It's it's who's ever heard. I never heard of NeoWits as a publisher or Round 8 as a developer. Kind of came
Mhm.
out of nowhere. It felt like. Um. So, but in terms of like moving units, like what
Mhm.
does that mean now? Because like in terms of like you have Game Pass, so like are those units that are counted like downloads, or is it actual physical discs that are shipped? Do you know how they measure that these days? Or is there?
I don't have like a definitive answer for sure. I'm not
Uh-huh.
privy to the data, but
Got it.
I would imagine, um, I imagine if you're on Game Pass, there's some kind of deal,
Mm-hmm.
because you're trying to bring value to the past, and I'm sure there's some kickback for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then unit sold is, definitely like unit sold is not just physical. It would include end-to-end sales on any digital storefront. I
Mm-hmm.
think, and what's good and what's not good is dependent on what your expectations were.
Sure.
I would imagine the Lies of P team is pretty happy with where it went, especially with the reception from people who played it. It seemed very positive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and 1 million copies is probably, I don't know what, I have no idea what they were shooting for, but that seems like a great milestone for, like you said, maybe a team that is maybe a little more obscure that people don't
Mm-hmm.
know off the top of their head. A
Mm-hmm.
million copies is a great way to get people to see your name and your company. And depending on what they spent on, I have no idea what the budget was, but depending on what they spent
Yeah.
on it, maybe 1 million wasn't enough, or maybe 1 million was, it blew it out of the water. It all
Yeah.
depends on what it took to make it, and what your expectations were. But in general, crossing a million units sold is a big milestone for anybody. So I'm sure
Sure.
they're happy.
Yeah, yeah, no, and because of that, they greenlit a sequel and they got DLC apparently coming for the
Oh,
first game.
well then, yeah, that's great. Good for them.
Yeah, it was funny because like I think it was thank you, Danny, for answering that. But I think it was something funny, and I'm gonna get the numbers wrong. But when I was talking, Mitch and I were talking about Max Payne 3, I think like it was something like they sold 3 million units, but they were like looking to sell five, so it was like a failure or something. Something,
That can happen. Yeah,
yeah,
that's your
and like,
expectations.
yeah, exactly. Like, that's why I bring it up because it's kind of funny, right? Because you'd think like 3 million units, that's like a million, amazing. I don't know the number exactly, but I remember we talked about it, and there was like there was a projection versus what they actually moved, and you'd be like, well, sounded like it did great, but of course, what they spent on it was probably what Rockstar probably spent on it was crazy. So,
Yeah,
um.
well, you know.
That Rockstar money, man. It's a whole thing. I got a friend who just went to work for Rockstar.
Hmm.
And see if I can get he seems like they I think they threw him into a bunker and he's not allowed to come out anymore. So I don't know when I'll get to talk to him, but
I do know that it seems like they're having some sort of return to office,
yeah.
in effort to ship what they got going on. So
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, it seems like they're really like they're pushing. So I probably won't be able to talk to him for a while, but
They must be excited.
yeah, I would think so. So also Lies of P was developed all in the Unreal 4 engine, which is
Or,
interesting.
huh?
Yeah,
Interesting.
Unreal 4. Yeah, yeah. Um, it seems like Unreal 4 anybody can develop a game on Unreal 4 basically, right? Correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong. A lot of
Oh,
people
well,
do.
wait. In terms of like license, yes. I thought you meant
Yeah.
like, I mean, you can't just boot it up and the game makes itself.
No, no, no.
But
Like that.
um
But
so
I mean,
I don't know what the licensing is like for Unreal 4 now.
uh-huh.
I think the push is for Unreal 5. Anyone could just download Unreal 5. I don't know what
Nice.
4 is like. I had it. I did some Unreal 4 work when I was in grad school, but I don't I think it was still free then, but there was like if you published it, there was some kickback. I can't remember exactly what the structure was, and now I know it's all Unreal 5. So, but for a studio of their size and
Hmm.
their resources, it was probably no problem. Unreal 4 at that point when they started probably was a more mature engine and
Yeah.
maybe wasn't the risk going to Unreal 5 at the time, but maybe I'm sure the sequel will be Unreal 5.
Yeah, yeah. They'll get yeah, Tim Sweeney comes and he takes your game from you or something. I don't know.
No,
Uh,
I don't I don't think he cares that much.
yeah, no, I know, I know. He's doing fine. Um, okay, so that's all I kind of really want to talk about. I highly recommend Liza P if you want to just get wrecked.
Mm,
And because of that, I pre-ordered Elden Ring. With the well, pre-ordered Elden Ring.
the DLC.
I pre-ordered Elden Ring with the DLC attached to it that comes out in June. So,
Okay.
because I heard because I haven't played that one and people were like, yeah, it's kind of one of the more easier ones, and I'm like, Liza P is considered probably one of the more easier Souls-like games, so I was like, I'll give it a shot. Um, and then
I have not made it out of Limgrave in Elden
okay,
Ring. We'll learn what that means. Um,
I'm excited.
it's enough. I put like 15, 20 hours in.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I do a game. I do my game of the year, end of year list every year, and I post
Mm-hmm.
it on Christmas. It's like
Mm-hmm.
my Christmas tradition. Over on my Substack.
Oh, you
And
got one, homie? You got it.
yeah. We could link that
All
later.
right, all right, all right, all right, all right.
And I require myself to play 10 hours. If I'm going to put it on the list, it has to have a minimum of 10 hours or see through the gameplay loop.
Mm-hmm.
And Elden Ring, I made it to 20 hours before I was like, there's other things I want to play and I suck at this game. But Elden Ring is yeah, if you like Lies of P, you'll definitely like Elden Ring. Elden Ring to me, in turn, like I think the Soulsborne games are great. Um, but there's a what do I want how do I want to phrase this? There is like a darkness to them or a like a dreariness to them that Elden Ring didn't have.
Yeah.
Elden Ring had like these bright yellows and like this sort of more high fantasy-esque
Less
tone.
grimdark. Yeah, less
Yeah,
grimdark.
you less grimdark, and it's even though it still is definitely in there, it's less of it, and
Hmm.
I it definitely hit the vibes for me really well.
Yeah,
So
it looks
Elden Ring's good.
beautiful. I kind of was curious to want to get it, but I just never did. And then they announced this new DLC, and then I played Lies of P, and I was like, I might as well try it now. So,
No, you'll enjoy it. You'll have fun.
yeah, yeah, cool. Um, so that will bring us into our next portion of the show. But we want to talk to you, Danny. I want to talk to you about how you got into games. You know,
Hmm.
how this guy from New York just was like what the pipeline was. How did you get to how did we get to Seattle working for Bungie? You know, what that
Sure.
process was like. And yeah, just tell me all about it.
Yeah, my journey's weird. My journey's really weird. I had a couple of different careers in my life. I started out, I really thought I was going to be a musician.
Hmm.
And I was in a band for a long time, played in a bunch of different bands. We had, mild local success. I wasn't going to go to college. Um, I was going to hopefully, back at the time when I was doing that, that was still like you would drop out of high school to get signed to a record label. Like that's what you would
Hmm.
do. And, I was hoping for that. And my parents really wanted me to go to college. I was also at the time doing a bunch of graphic design work for my band, other bands in the area, coding MySpaces, things like that. Um, and so I ended up going to college for design, for graphic design. And I ended up working as a graphic designer in various places for a while. Doing, I was doing screen printing, I was doing digital design, I was doing logos, I was doing all this stuff. And then I ended up working as a UX UI designer. And we had an intern one summer, and he was a game design major. And at the time when I had gone to college, there game design was not like a thing. Like it was very there was no game design programs, at least not any that I could afford or find.
Hmm.
Because I also went to SUNY Purchase,
Hell
and
yeah.
we one of the probably the main reasons we picked SUNY Purchase is the price point.
Hmm.
Um, and I ended up working with him uh over that summer break, he would be making his like his summer project in Unity, and I'd be like, actually, fuck this. I want to do that. I've always loved games. It's always been a passion of mine, but like it felt impenetrable. It felt like there was sort of this like this curtain that you just or black box that you just didn't talk about. And never, so I didn't know. And then once I started doing that, I quit my job. I made a like an iPhone game. And then I used that to get into grad school. Around that time, Destiny 1 had come out, and I, had been a Halo fan and a Marathon fan, but my shooter experience was mainly rooted in Call of Duty. But then
Mhm.
Destiny had come out, and me being a big RPG fan, and knowing that Halo had, the best gut feeling gunplay, I was like, oh, maybe this is the magic combo for me. And I started playing, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna work at Bungie. That's what I want to do. And so I ended up going to grad school, and I didn't get to work at Bungie. um, it was not until the pandemic. Um, I had worked in other gamification projects at corporations. Like I had done some consulting at ESPN. I worked at Scholastic, the book publishing company, which you obviously know of.
Mhm.
I worked on a bunch of their games. Um,
Wait, wait,
that was
wait, 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 wait. Back it up.
Yeah.
What are Scholastic video games?
So they're largely mobile games.
Okay.
There was some web games, and at the time, I was actually working there during the release of Destiny 2, the original Destiny 2 release in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And shout out to my friend Keith. We would literally, so it would be great. What we would do is we would get to work at like 8:30, and nothing would start by the way, working in like downtown Manhattan, because of like the subways and people and traffic, no real thing starts before 9:30. So like you might have like maybe high corporate stuff is like we have 9 a.m. meeting, but like pretty much everyone knew that like I can guarantee you I'll show up between 8:30 and 9:30, but like I can't really guarantee more accuracy than that. Um, Sort of everyone knew that. So like we would get there around 8:30, 8:45. We'd play battle. So this is before Fortnite came out. And we would play the Battle Royale on Roblox on the Scholastic computers, me and Keith just sitting on opposite ends of like the cubicle row. And then before like a meeting or whatever, we would get up and then be like, did you see that on the Destiny Reddit? Like, oh, whatever. And then Destiny 2 had come out. But then we would go. So work at Scholastic was great, but our games were largely nothing like that. Um, we wanted to be like that. We wanted to be like Roblox or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember I worked on Spirit Animals, had like a dungeon crawler Diablo style game.
Nice.
Um, we had this was also big. I was a huge Captain Underpants fan as a kid. We worked
Mm-hmm.
with Dave Pilkey on the Planet Pilkey, which was like a set of mobile mini games based on all of his characters
Oh
across all
man,
the different IP that he had.
did you hang out with him? That guy
I
seems all
met
right.
him. He's a funny dude. I met him once during the Christmas time, like Christmas time stuff, and he signed a copy of Dogman, the Dogman that I had worked on the game that was tying into that Dogman release for that quarter or whatever, and he signed the copy.
Bro, that's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, it was like Scholastic was a great job. And I was sad to go, but I ended up going back to SUNY Purchase to work as a design instructional support and professor. And I ended up working at teaching and working at Purchase for 3 years in the design department that I had graduated from
That's crazy.
and then the pandemic hit. And then that's when I started working at Bungie.
The Pandemi Lovato
The
hit.
the pandemic without the pandemic, I would have never gotten my job at Bungie because Bungie was one of the first studios to really take remote work seriously. They
Mm-hmm.
knew Seattle was one of the first areas hit with the pandemic. It started sort of West Coast and sort of spread. Um, New York was also hit very early, but because of international travel. But Seattle in
Mm-hmm.
America was one of the first areas, and um, Bungie went home really early. They were the first ones. They sort of pioneered a work from home flow for themselves, and one of the things that allowed them to do was take a risk. My first position was as contract tester. It was as low of a position that you could get. And they took the risk on me because like they didn't have to really do any like I was before, if they were like want to take a risk on me, it's like I could never have gotten an entry level position like that because they'd have to fly me out and then they'd have to pay for me to move and all this stuff. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's much easier in that time when Bungie was expanding and because the work from home stuff made it easier. I was a more attractive candidate at that time, and I was able to get the job because of that. And then my goal was always to work at Bungie. It took me I had applied over 60 times, and on that time, I was just convinced. I was convinced that was gonna be my last application. I was like, if I can't get contract tester on a work from home basis, then I'm just like I'm gonna give up.
Pack it
I
up,
will.
Danny. Yeah.
I'm not gonna work in AAA games anymore. The dream is dead. I'm moving on. Because I have to move on with my life. I can't continue to do this. And because I had started literally from the moment I booted up Destiny 1 in 2014 to 2021, I was like, I'm going to work like this. That was my sole focus was working on Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my last application for sure. And I ended up getting a callback for it. So it was a actually a funny story was I actually got the NDA first and not like, hey, do you want to like meet and talk about this job? I just got came back from work and saw or no, I'm sorry, this is pandemic. So like I'm sitting like work is like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and I'm like I see a thing come through my phone. It just says Bungie NDA, and I'm like, what? I'm like, and I'm like, did I fucking say something? Did I fuck up somewhere? Did it, like, am I being sued?
Yeah. Yeah, you're
And
cleansed.
then no, it was then the next email comes from the recruiter, and I'm like, hey, maybe you do that out of order.
Yeah.
Like you should. Um,
That was because there's two different people on that job, and the one person was like really on top of things and was like, "I'm just gonna just do this right now," and then and then the other person was like, I'll reach out to him, and in a bit, I got some things going on.
yeah. So I don't know. I don't. I know. Yeah, I don't know. But I had always had this thought of like, if I could just get in the room, metaphorically, if I could just get in the room, I know that I could convince these people that I'm one of them.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if that happened, but 3 years later I'm still at Bungie. But I yeah, it was a that was the start of me working at Bungie.
Can you explain what a contract tester is for an
Sure.
entry level for just like for an entry level
Uh
job if you're getting development? Because I don't know what that is either. So
sure,
tell me.
yeah. So testers I can only speak to my experience. And I have a lot of friends across the industry who've done QA jobs, QA.
Oh, okay. So sorry, it's just quality assurance. Okay, got it. Cool.
Yeah, and so essentially, as a tester, your job is you're the last line of defense before the consumer gets the product.
Right.
Um, and that's probably one of definitely one of the most crucial roles that you could play. And I was a tester on for me, I was a tester on the team that I'm now a designer on, which is the combat team. But in general, it contract test means I've been contracted for a certain amount of time. Um, Sometimes it's different for everybody, different studios, but like sometimes it's through a contracting agency, sometimes it's maybe straight through the company. Depends on your local laws and stuff like that. But and then you have a certain amount of time. I think my first contract was 12 months,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can be extended up to a certain amount of time, but they are not considered full time. So you don't get the full benefits
Mm-hmm.
and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And so if you're a contractor, typically you are, at least for me, I was trying my damnedest to figure out a way to full time status.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And and so like from contract tester to moving up, was it like, you were under contract for a certain amount of time, and then was there like other positions that were open that you just applied for, or they were like, "Hey, you're doing a really great job. Were you be interested in like pursuing such and such path more or something like that?"
Yeah, it depends. It depends.
Hmm.
You can, private corporations can do whatever they like.
Sure.
But yeah, so my route, people can be converted.
Hmm.
Um, but for me, what they we there was a lot of contractors and only so many roles, and so at the time, they had opened some roles,
Hmm.
and all contractors, if you wanted to, not all did. And we applied, and we had to basically go through the process from scratch. The only benefit was you get to go into an interview saying, I already know your processes, I already know your tools, I already
Mm-hmm.
know
Mm-hmm.
you in some cases. I know who the person
Yeah.
talking to me is. And that gives you, that gives you an advantage.
Yeah, cool.
So that's what I did. I ended up uh I think actually from the time I started in June 21 to to April, no, to February 22, I think I had spent 22 hours total in Bungie interviews. Um, for various positions, trying to convert myself into FTE status.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so I ended up getting the FTE test job, but I also ended up getting an interview for activities design.
Mm-hmm.
And um, the test job was they were very generous and were like, well, you have the test job in your back pocket. If you get the activities design job and that's what you like more, that's cool. But you we'll wait on your acceptance as long as the design process takes to play out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I bombed the activities design interview. I bombed bad.
Oh
It
no,
was just an
Danny.
embarrassing showing. Yeah, it was bad. I
It
was
gets
so
better,
nervous.
Danny. Don't worry. You make it in. Don't worry.
I do.
I know
And
how
so
the story ends.
right. And I took the FTE test job, and then a few months later, an entry level associate had opened on for design on my team, and I went for it and went through the whole rigmarole of the process and
Mhm.
managed to make it through here on the other end.
That's so great. And did you start when you got to the other end, did you start on like working on the gameplay designer like combat specific area, or was it different than that when you started, or is it like how, like where your position now, was that like sort of the position that you just got into, or did you start somewhere else after
No,
like?
I mean, my position has been the same in
Mm-hmm.
terms of for design. It's been the same for the last couple of years in terms of like the types of content I work on,
Mm-hmm.
um, the things that I can do, in year, whatever, however many years in now versus then is different. I
Mm-hmm.
can maybe do more complex things or be a little more fire and forget, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the types of the content I make for the game, it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same content I was testing. I've been fortunate enough now to be on combat um since I got my offer in 21. And the team is I've been working with a lot of the same people since then, which in AAA games is not always guaranteed.
Yeah,
Um
yeah.
so,
It's a big machine, my man. So you never know.
yeah, yeah. I didn't realize how big when I in 2014 when I booted up Destiny for the first time and was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna work here, and then it's like, oh, actually, this is a lot harder than I thought.
Yeah, no, it's not a lot harder and it's a lot bigger. You have, some studios, I think like Blizzard has about 400 employees or something. Like, I mean,
I don't
it's a,
know.
yeah, something like that. I don't know what it is. But like, it's a like I said, it's not 12 guys in a basement, coding, Doom levels.
Hmm.
Anymore, and even and it's grown so substantially too, so quickly. I mean, when I was watching an interview with Todd Howard about just making games and stuff, and I think he said, when they made, when they made when Bethesda made their Terminator game, System Shock, I think, in the
Hmm.
90s, I think there was like, he said there was like 14 or 18 people. And then when they got to do Oblivion in 2006, I want to say, they had about 60 people. And then, of course,
Wild.
yeah, and of course, when you think about that, right? And
Yeah.
then I think for Starfield, of course, they had like, 300 people or whatever it was, like a real, obviously a ton of people. And it's crazy too, right? Because like, you think about like Bethesda and their gameplay philosophy, and like a lot of it is just it's been, since like maybe Daggerfall or Morrowind, been a more or less the same kind of engine, just kind of like used over and over in more mature and different ways. And like it's so funny, like as the technology's grown, as the business has grown, the teams have grown. But I do think it's really crazy to think about like, oh, 18 years ago when Oblivion came out, there was only 60 people that worked on it. Like, there's a ton of testers, but like the 60 people who developed the game, like
Hmm.
such a small team. Like
It's
when you
yeah,
think about
it's
it now.
hard. I don't know. I I don't know. I started when I went to grad school in 2015. It was a means. I had viewed it as a quick way to um career change to get to Bungie faster.
Hmm.
But what where I went to NYU, and it was a pretty much an indie. It was more of an indie games program, and you were the which is good in some ways. Like they want you to be able to build a game from scratch to ship
Sure.
by yourself or with
Hmm.
as minimal resources as possible. And you get scrappy and you get good at that. And I think about like what you're saying just now about the blue. It's like I can see it. I can see it because at the start I thought, at the start of grad school, I was like, this is impossible. There is no way. There's no way. And um by the end, I was like, this is hard, but I see it, I see the path. And I think that's like when in terms of like making something like
Hmm.
there's ways to break down the problem. And ultimately too, I think that's like I'm not an engineer. I'm not a an art, well, I guess I'm not an artist in games or anything like that, but as a designer I've always viewed it as like we design in general is just like problem solving. Like
Hmm.
it is creative problem solving. Like I went to graphic design art school, but I never graphic design being an art school is always a little weird because it's always like it, design is just about solving the problem in front of you. And
Hmm.
I think game design too is just like I want to break down as many problems as possible. And when like I think that's actually like what maybe like players versus developers, or like if you want to move into that mindset, is like actually learning what questions to ask and identifying what problems need to be solved
Hmm.
is how you start.
Hmm.
That's where you start. And then you start to go, "Oh, I can see maybe how a team made it through this process," when you at least when you start to look at things that way.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's just yeah, I think game design is from what I have heard about it, understand it, seen videos of, has always been like a constant problem solving exercise, or like putting puzzle pieces together, trying to figure it out. And then also, taking the thing that you made and then throwing a bunch of other things at it to see if it still works. Right.
Well, yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's I, you no matter what size game you're working on, the important part from a game designer standpoint, um, is to look at your systems uh at a macro level
Hmm.
and understand where your things and where your decisions fit into the entirety of the product, because you might change one thing but it might have cascading effects down, and then that creates new problems, and maybe that's okay, and
Hmm.
maybe that's a sacrifice you're willing to make. Like,
Hmm.
I did this thing, I really believed in it, and then oops, I caused a lot of problems elsewhere, and then you have to go put out those fires, and maybe that's worth it.
Yeah.
Sometimes in indie games, that's like usually what happens, where I'm like, oh, you know what? I decided do this. I'm gonna do this thing, and then it turns out a week later I have a massive headache trying to do something else because I stupidly. Anyway,
Hmm.
um, I'm working on a indie space shooter game, and like my decision to make 7 player characters has uh destroyed my ability to do something in the art pipeline. So, um, but I had picked 7 because it was a great number beforehand when I didn't have to think about art resources.
You're like, well,
Uh,
now I gotta make it, and you're like, whoops.
yeah,
Damn
but I'm
it.
saying like that's just like a really like small example. But yeah, you should always think systemically, um, and try to understand where your work fits in with all the other teams and all the other systems at play, especially as a gameplay designer too. In action games, right? Like
Hmm.
the how you tune your jump or your sprint speed uh will have ramifications on the world team building the levels.
Hmm.
Like how big do they got to be? How big do the doors got to be?
Hmm.
Um, based on your player size, your run speed, your jump height, those kinds
Mm-hmm.
of things. Like you can't just willy-nilly change those things. But depends what the brief is. Depends what the art director or the lead designer wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously too that affects the end user and their what they do with it. And um I think you always have to constantly be thinking in like sort of like it's like well, yeah, it's like you move one thing and then it like somewhere down the road it affects three other things that you didn't first like see
Hmm.
coming, and I think that's a really like that to me like makes game development really uh difficult, I guess. Like how I try to wrap my brain around it. Like I try to listen to all these other folks in the industry and stuff like that talk about games, and I think it's also too hard. It's also hard, I guess, too, for like games are such is such like a team developed situation, right? Um,
Can be,
eh,
yeah,
yeah, it
yeah.
can yeah, it can be, yeah.
I mean, so
But
there, Concerned Abe. I mean, he had help making Stardew Valley, but it was largely a one-man effort for like 8 years.
oh, sure, sure, sure. I guess I mean like I guess what
My,
I mean,
at my scale.
yeah, at your scale or
Hmm.
when you are working with a large group of people, like it's hard to be the lone wolf in the like I'm gonna make this decision and then of course,
Yeah, nobody likes a cowboy.
yeah.
Um,
No,
nobody, nobody just likes you hee haw and yeeting shit in.
yeah.
But
You're no John Romero, Danny.
yeah,
We
no,
don't we don't
that we know. No, it's no, and it's different too. So it's actually, I don't think a lot of players think about this stuff,
hmm
but as someone who is a designer now, uh, earlier game developers had to be much better problem solvers than we do now. Because their problems were much harder and much more complex. So, I mean, for instance, like early arcade, you had to be an electrical engineer to make a game
hmm
because you needed to be able to program the currents on the board to respond properly. And there's actually Space Invaders famously has a bug where it's like if you kill an alien in Space Invaders, they start to move faster, right? And
hmm
that's like sort of a mechanic of Space Invaders, but that was never the intention. It was just that because you killed an alien, it could now render the other aliens faster, and so it was actually doing that. And the design of the board in the arcade cabinet never accounted for that fact.
hmm
And now it's just a staple of that genre of game that they can get faster. Um,
Cool.
and like solving those problems, I'm no electrical engineer. I'm just a doofus with a keyboard. But um you know you think about like the problems that they were solving, like Shigeru Miyamoto, like the problems they were solving on Mario and NES is like we don't solve those problems.
hmm
But their legwork, and we stand on their shoulders. Like they solved those problems so that we can solve different problems today. We
Sure.
know economies of scale in terms of like what we can do and for Destiny, like live service games, or like those are problems that they weren't solving in the 80s. But we're also not solving the problems that they were in the 80s. We're solving different ones, and it's important that sort of, okay, well, I'm a game designer in 2024. uh what can I solve? Like, what are the problems I face and how can I solve them, instead of trying to always reinvent the wheel. Like, and I think
hmm
like, indie games I think deal with that much harder. AAA has the resources to push the edge.
hmm
Um, but indie games sometimes it's hard. It's hard to find a way to push a boundary or solve new problems and not retread ground, because a lot of the tools, a lot of middleware it makes it very easy to just remake something that you love. And that's fine too. Making love letter games is a great way to get started. It's a great way to make money if it comes out good.
hmm Yeah,
But
I think we've talked about it a lot previously on this podcast, but I think like Sabotage, I really love their like Sea of Stars. I just was blew me away, and that's like a
yeah.
game that's very much a love letter and very concise and condensed, sort
Hmm.
of turn-based RPG game that is very much inspired by things like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy. And it
Yep.
doesn't really try to reinvent the wheel on those things. It just does it it just does that very, very well, and it's very
Well,
enjoyable.
I would say it's authentic. That's what goes back to authenticity, where it's
Hmm.
like it's hard. Sometimes it's just hard to be original, but if you do something with authenticity, I think people respond to that and people respect that. If you do it with an authenticity that is to you as your person, with
Hmm.
your experience, people will resonate with that. There was actually, so it's funny. We talked about this earlier, but before we started recording. But like I've also dabbled in writing,
Hmm.
um, and one of the best pieces of advice I ever got about writing from another writer, um, which maybe actually isn't help for getting published, but it helped me feel better at the time about not
Sure.
being published,
Yeah.
was write the story you would want to read. And chances are, if you want to read it, other people will want to read it because, the human condition, we're not so different.
Hmm.
Um, and I always look at that the same way with games, where it's like I can't be so obscure of a person that the game that I want to make and want to play isn't so different from what anybody else wants to do. And so I think but you just got to find a way to do it authentically. And
Hmm.
that's where you dive into your own experiences and your own lens that you see the world through, and try to, you know, and try to figure out a way to do that in whatever genre of game. Um, Typically I find people will respond pretty well.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I do think that people making the game they want to play is a thing that's come up over and over again for me when I've, you know, watched these people, heard these people talk too. Once again, like John Carmack, John Romero, they were just kind of interested in making games that they wanted to play. Back to Pal World, I mean, those guys that made Pal World, like they were like interviewed or something by someone in Japan, and so what was your like they asked them something like, so what was like your overall like, design document for this game or whatever it was, and the Power guys were like, we just want to make a fun video game. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of what it was. They didn't have like a thesis on, what Pal World was supposed to be as an experience. They were like, no, just we just thought it would be cool and we made
Yeah.
it. So I
Yeah.
think I
No,
think I think that's awesome. Um,
that makes sense. And for me too, I mean, for me, the game I wanted to play was Destiny. And so the game I wanted to make was Destiny.
right.
And so I have been wildly fortunate enough that I am able to now make Destiny. But I work on other stuff on the side too.
Hmm.
Like I said, making a space shooter. Like I've always been inspired by asteroids and Space Invaders, things like that. So those are the kinds of like little games that I want to try and make on my own in addition to working on Destiny. But it's totally different scale and skill set.
Right. I think that's super. First of all, sorry. First of all, it reminded when you said asteroids games, and then I thought of, you remember Resogun for PlayStation 3?
Yes.
Oh man, I love
House
that
was
game.
this Housemark, I believe.
I think so. Yeah, that game was
Housemark. The Returnal
so.
team.
Yeah, there was that game was so good. Anyway, um, so I mean, again, back to Destiny and back to this. So, I mean, I think that's really cool. I think, well, for me, it's really cool to hear that you're of two, not two minds. I don't want to say that, but you're of two paths, right? Like, so you work on this huge entity of a video game for one of the biggest video game companies in the world, and it's your job to be in that world, and I think that's such a gift, right? And then you
hmm
also are on the side or on your in your free time is that you're creating a much more like bottlenecked version, not a bottleneck version of what you're doing, but you're like a more macro version of what you're doing. You're making the games for fun that you like too as well. You like Destiny, you also like doing this other scaled down version of the bigger
hmm
stuff that you're doing. And I think that's really cool because it kind of speaks that games aren't always going to be like, well, I only play big games, or I only develop big games. Games are games. So,
Yeah. It
um,
it's yeah, for me too, it's like I mean some people are like that. Some people only like to play the big hits every
mhm,
year.
mhm,
And that's fine. I think there's like for me there's it's just tinkering. Um I can't help but tinker.
mhm,
Um and I can't help but noodle, and I like turning knobs and seeing the effects. And so like Destiny Destiny is one of those things for me. It's like I feel, you know, to me, it's a beautiful part of Destiny is like when I'm playing, the controller melts away. Um, the game feels so intrinsically good in its moment to moment gameplay. That like you forget, like it's so responsive. You press the buttons and things happen,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you can continue, and it's a big shooter, big budget shooter game, so there's a lot of depth to that. Like you could, you try and push the game as far as you can. And for me, in my free time too, it's like I want to do the same thing, not in a shooter game necessarily, like in an FPS game or something, but I
Mm-hmm.
want to I want to create the feeling of the controller falling away. I like gameplay design more so. Like I'm not actually, like we talked about earlier, I bombed the activities design interview because like I don't really like I could do your level design, sure. But that's not what I'm passionate about. What I'm passionate about is like when you press a button on the controller, what does it do? And like making that feel as good as possible
Mm-hmm.
um, is like we call it juice sometimes. It's a term I got from grad school. Bennett, I remember Bennett Foddy. He was a professor there at the time. He would call it juice, which is like it's like how you make, like that's how you, like you give the feel to it, so, or you accentuate the feel of the action when you press the button. Like how much feedback are you giving the player?
Mm-hmm.
Like screen shake and VFX performances and animation and rumble and all these things, and how it feels. And um Destiny at the scale that we have, or any AAA game really, like the scale that you have resources for that, right? You have VFX artists, you have animators, and you have the designers and the engineers, and they're all working on this one thing to make this one thing feel great. Um, but I want to feel what it's like to do that by myself too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I just can't help but tinker. That's maybe why I'll never end up releasing anything, because the only part I really care about
It's the
you
tinkering
know
part.
what I mean? Like I don't actually have to release Destiny. Like I don't there's a whole group of wonderful people that like worry about getting the game onto the platform. um but for me it's always like, oh, we're done with that release? Okay. Yeah, I guess so. All my bugs are gone. But like it's like but when I do it on my own, like releasing a game is the hardest part, because I'm just like, yeah, I don't want to make your resolution settings. I don't care. Uh but when you turn the ship, boy, does it feel good when you turn the ship. Um,
When
so
you make
it's
ship go, it's great.
yeah, the turbo boost with the little rumble and screen shake, that shit was great. Um, I
But
don't I don't
field of
really
view, I don't know what you're talking about.
like, yeah, I'm like, oh, do I want to design the bosses? Like, I don't know. I don't know if I just like zooming around in the spaceship part, like.
Yeah, just take me away. Take me away in my spaceship, away from my problems.
But I have been, yeah, like my Unity project I've been working on the last few months. I just like I'll end up like, oh yeah, work's done. I'm gonna boot it up and work on it. And I end up just hitting the play button and spinning the ship around in space, just shooting the base enemies that are just sitting there standing still.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, 2 hours goes by, and I'm like, cool, well, I guess that's what I did tonight. It's just I didn't work on it at all. I just kept noodling these numbers here on the boost settings. But
uh what so you know, working on the working just by yourself on the Unity engine, how are you liking that, by the way? How do you like the Unity engine? Unity.
Uh, yes, Unity's cool. That's
Mm-hmm.
fine. Any middleware has its pros and cons. I
Sure.
think it's like a fancy pencil. You want to pick the right tool for the job.
Mm-hmm.
This game happens to be 2D. I find working in 2D in Unity to be fine. I was working on a Godot project. Godot I think is great too for 2D.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Unity in this case, I actually ended up having a couple of assets that I had for years from other developers on the asset store that ended up giving me a good, a good leg up on getting some stuff stood up that, not that I didn't like want to do, like building out some like scene framework for like the start screen and all these things that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to like have to build.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I thought that was, that helped me a lot. But like if I was gonna make something in 3D or something, maybe I'd go Unreal. I've done some work on Unreal 4. I haven't really made the shift to Unreal 5 because I haven't had a need. And obviously Destiny has its own proprietary engine.
Mm-hmm.
internal. Um, and I also really love working like part of the reasons I'm also I'm still at Bungie too is like I love working in the tools that we have. So
Sure. Yeah.
um and I find the skills transferable. So Unity to me felt like a good pick at the moment. But I don't really have a loyalty to it. It's just like you want to pick the right brush or the
Sure.
right pencil or the right
Sure.
paints. You know what I mean? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
oil or acrylic. Which one do you want? Depends on what you're painting.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, back to the gameplay loop and whatever. So like what the famous Halo 3 Bungie comment is the 30 seconds of fun,
Uh-huh.
comment.
Yeah.
And that, I think that still persists with their gameplay design even now. Like I think, you
Thank you.
know, Bungie Bungie has they made console shooters a thing and they made them like great.
Hmm.
And it still feels good to this day to uh like it's so recognizable, and yet at the same time uh like so good you don't even notice it. So like if you were to put a controller in my hand in a FPS game that was developed by Bungie, but they didn't tell me it was developed by Bungie, but you said, run around this map right now and just do a few things, I probably
Hmm.
could tell you that was a Bungie game, like just based on character movement and like fluidity and like how you interacted with the world, because it's almost like they have such a trademark version of how good first person shooters should run.
Hmm.
And they've just carried that with them, and it's great. I mean, you boot up Destiny and you're just like, I know it, like this, I know I don't have to get used to anything. Like it already feels good, you know what I mean? Like I always find that with their games. And like still going back to the old Halos, which obviously are dated now, but like you go back, you play those, like they still feel so good.
Hmm.
And now of course, just with like fidelity and just frame rate and all that stuff now, especially with the new systems and everything, just it's like butter. So do you find that that's like a philosophy that's still often like talked about, that not the 30 seconds of fun, because that was kind of like one guy who I don't think is there anymore, but they, like, do they find that they're really interested, like is the gameplay loop a big part of the discussion, I guess?
I mean, I am a gameplay designer, so
Sure.
it is absolutely the core part of my job every day.
Mm-hmm.
And but also like remember too, it goes back to what I talked about earlier about standing on the shoulders of giants.
Sure.
I stand on the shoulders of the Bungie devs that came before me. Um, and their work and their philosophies and their problem solving on how to make shooters good on console.
Mm-hmm.
I did not have to solve that problem. Like the people that made Halo, right? Like they solved that problem, and I get to solve different problems, but I can't. I think the way I view it, my day to day is like don't try to problem solve in a way that violates the lessons we've already learned.
Gotcha. That's
Um,
good. I like
and
that.
that's like, but also we should also try to learn the lessons too. Like I should, internalize what makes those things like why did Halo feel so good on Xbox in 2002 or whatever? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
um, what did it what is it about the look stick and the movement stick and the button throws and how like the reaction of the software to the button presses like what is it about those things that feel good? Like, what is actually the systemic level answer?
Mm-hmm.
Which I won't give you, but like, what is this? I'm not going to get into the tech, like, it's just too much.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um what are those answers? Internalize that, know it, and then therefore when when you're working your day to day, not to violate those things. And you
Mm-hmm.
can understand that, like, hey, I had this idea, and you try it and you go, actually, this is breaking a core value,
Mm-hmm.
right? We talk a lot about like content is communication. um and the game must communicate its intent to the player,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if the player presses something and doesn't understand what it does, then your content is not communicating. And that's like a principle that has long been a Bungie principle, um, for a really long time. And it's something we talk about daily. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, if I make this thing, Um, or a great example actually for a first person shooter. Um, I'll be honest, I have violated this a couple of times and wait a second, stop, what am I doing? Um, where first person shooter game, you're in first person,
Hmm.
and you want to make something. What's something you should not do? Well, probably don't put it behind the player because they won't see it, right? Because you're in first person.
Yeah.
In third person games, you can get away with that because you have the whole part of the camera behind the player, but in a first person game, like maybe don't do that. I
Hmm.
mean, there are some instances maybe you get it to work, or maybe it starts out behind you and then comes in front, or maybe it floats around. There's ways to get it to work, but
Hmm.
in general, it's like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, hang on, that's a lesson we've learned. Let's not let's not try to relearn this lesson by trying to make something else, go behind you. And of course, sometimes it gets the better of me, and I'm like, wait, what if it did this? And you're like, wait a second, hang on.
Back
But
it up, Danny.
yeah.
I think too, like so, like to learning from the past and all that, and understanding problems. One of my other favorite things too is like watching those old Halo docs with when you had like Joe Staten, right?
Yeah, sure.
Just Joe Staten and like Marty O'Donnell and all them talking about like Halo and Halo 2, but also like the way they would talk about the game and how essentially they had problems that made like they made the game a certain way because they were avoiding a problem that they couldn't create, like couldn't fix, and doing so they like you remember that part of the game for being really awesome, but you had no idea that they only made that part of the game because they couldn't like figure out a way
Sure.
around it. And like that's always too my favorite part of game design is like when developers are like, there's actually this huge problem that's game breaking, but if we do it, if we if we make the player go in like this sort of kind of way, it fixes that. And then, you only remember that part and you don't remember what their original vision was for that level or something like that. Um,
Creative problem solving, like I said.
yeah, it's really cool. And like listening to all that, it's really funny how, you know, uh, just, yeah, games are made, man. Um, okay, we haven't, I mean,
They escape.
yeah. Yeah, they blow up the Halo ring and that they win. Um so just very briefly, in a very brief way, can you just, when you go into the well, when you go and start your day at work,
Yeah.
like what does that look like? What does that day start with? Lots of emails probably, but I mean like um what is it? You have a queue of like issues to solve and you're like, or like a thing of like, oh, like what? Yeah, I guess sort of like what does a day to day look like for you? Not big picture, really small scale. How do you
Well,
approach
big
it?
picture would be better. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, it depends on when I decide to start. We have our core hours, and sometimes I'm at the computer beforehand, sometimes I'm not,
Hmm.
because I generally work from home. I do live in the area, and I have gone into the office a couple of times, but generally I do work from home. So uh, typically I'll start by playing some Destiny in the morning. Um, I'll boot up my retail account and play some Destiny in the morning. Um, typically while there are some other early risers too.
Hmm.
And so like typically I don't do a lot of email. I do a lot more chat.
Hmm.
Um, and we'll there are some people, sometimes I'll have questions I have to ask, and sometimes there are people who have questions to ask of me, and typically I try to get ahead while I'm playing Destiny in the morning, eating breakfast, trying to figure that stuff out. And then by the time that, like, I'll usually stop playing around the time we start having, the morning suite of meetings. I don't, at my level, thankfully I spend more time making stuff than going to a lot of meetings.
Nice, nice.
But I'm not devoid of meetings, and sometimes most meetings are fun too. We are making games, right? Like, it's
Hmm.
very rare that I have, like, there's actually like more meetings that I want to go to than I should go to, and there have been times where I was like finding myself in meetings that I'm like, all you got, you just ask, hey, can I go to this meeting? People be like, yeah, and then like your lead will be like, can you just like actually not go to this meeting and just like maybe do your work?
Yeah,
And I'm like, yeah, that's
buddy.
a good point. Um, and so usually there's a morning suite of meetings, like maybe one or two. And then usually lunch. Lunch is typically, I'll usually walk the dog, actually go eat. Um, and also use that time catching up with the people directly on my team.
Hmm.
Um, and then in the afternoon, we usually start afternoon with play tests. Um, I play test every day. Um, and then you have your maybe your afternoon suite of meetings or your afternoon uh focused work periods where you're trying to like actually try to commit something to the repo, actually try to get something into the game for the build tomorrow so that you can
Hmm.
play test it tomorrow. Um, and yeah, it's typically like I feel like I bob and weave in and out of like basically play testing either the game internally or play or just playing a retail and then like actually working on whatever I'm assigned to be working on at that
Hmm.
time. Like I said, I'm on the abilities team, so I've typically a player ability of some kind or maybe a balance pass or something along those lines. It depends on what release I'm in. Too. Sometimes when I was a tester, I there was a point in time where I was working on four releases at one time, and
Whoa.
the numbers, Mason, what do they mean? I just was losing track of because they're all numbered in like code names or they have numbers, and I get lost at like which changes in which numbered branch, and I don't. So, and like also what doesn't help is like I I maybe I don't even know. I don't know what the like Destiny, the version number. I don't even know what Destiny retail version number is. I only know the internal. I don't know if they match. Maybe they do. But like my friends ask me something, I'm like, "Oh, did that ship in this version number?" And they're like, what the fuck are you
What are you
talking about?"
talking about, dude?
I'm
It's the
like,
video
"I
game
don't
you
know."
play right now. I don't know. What do you mean,
I'm like,
version?
what's Witch Queen? What's Lightfall? I just know them by the days they released and like what number of release they were. Like I don't um there's so many that's what's like working on a live game. It's just like the numbers. There's
Yeah.
so many numbers.
It's funny. It's funny you say that because, like, okay, so a couple of things. First is that when you're talking about meetings, it was really fun. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, I was in a meeting. It was like, it was a weekly meeting. Everyone get together. We got to talk. And then
Hmm.
we were talking about how we can get more manga into our accounts. And I was like, this is amazing. Like
I
this.
agree with that initiative, by the way.
Yeah, so it's like it's one of those things like where you're like, yes, I'm working. It's a serious corporate job, and I'm gonna have a serious work call meeting. And then you get there, and they're like, "What are we gonna do about this manga? How are we gonna sell more of it?" And you're like, "This is perfect. I love this."
Yeah, like I I have been very lucky in that like I mean, yeah, there's hard problems to solve sometimes. You go into meetings and you leave without answers.
Hmm.
Um, that's every job. It's corporate America in some regard. Like but the subject matter makes it infinitely easier to deal with. And I
Yes.
know I know that like for me and in general, like in all the places I've worked with in regards to games, not just Bungie, but like the people in the room are happy to be there and they love the subject matter and it's not, you know, I have never come across somebody in my personal experience, in my since I started making that very first iPhone game in 2014, like I can count on maybe one hand the amount of times I felt like somebody took it for granted being in the room in
Hmm.
any of the rooms I was in.
Hmm.
Anytime you get a chance to talk about games and you're getting paid to be there, people generally are having a good time. But that's not always the case, but
Yeah.
it is like it's like, yeah, damn, this is you look around, you're like, fuck, this is cool. I still it still happens to me.
Yeah, I definitely I get that feeling. I had that feeling when I was working at, when I was even managing the bookstore, but being able to pay my rent, my bills and everything by doing something I care about and love and know sort of like what the product is, and it's just a really great feeling. It was
Yeah.
also funny when when you mentioned like what version are you playing and all that stuff because I talk about books that are like I'm talking about books that are coming out in the fall right now. So like when those books when I finally see them like in the bookshop or like in the store, like, it's
You feel
it's
old.
yeah, because you're like, oh right, that came out. Like, I forgot. I'm already talking about summer books now, for next
I
year.
know.
So it's being in that weird headspace where like you're working on things that aren't even really out to the public yet, and it's like you're always like trying to remind yourself when you are like out in public and you have to talk about things that you're like, oh right, that's not even a thing yet.
I listen, my friends try and get me in trouble all the time. They're like, "Hey, didn't you say this?" And they'll like throw like a scenario at me because they know I can't help but correct them.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, "No, we
Wow.
didn't." I'm like, "Wait, hang on, wait, no, stop, not, no, hang on, no, we didn't buff or nerf that. Stop it, stop
Yeah,
it.
that's
I'm
right.
not.
Yeah. It's
Get out of
entrapment.
here."
That's
Yeah,
entrapment.
no, I know they enjoy it too. No, but like,
They got you
um,
mic'd up.
it's hard. I don't like sometimes. Sometimes I don't know about publishing in terms of, but it seems like you might be on the same sort of like I might be 6 months ahead sometimes.
Oh yeah, we're
Um,
yeah, we're way ahead.
right. So it's like it's hard. That's the hard part of the job. That's why it's like, you know what? I'm not gonna say nothing. Nope. I know nothing. Don't ask me.
I'm not leaving the house. You can't
Yeah.
talk to me about
No, I
nothing.
did I did I did meet two fans last night. Um in the wild. And like I had like a moment with, so they were like, because they saw I was wearing my Destiny raid jacket, which
Yeah.
is like a
Oh.
consumer thing. It's not like the company didn't give it to me. I bought it.
Bro, no, I thought they were like, yo, it's Danny from Bungie.
No, no, no. Though it does have my gamer tag on
Oh, nice.
on the chest. But I didn't end up with any friend requests this morning, so maybe we're fine. But um which is totally fine. Like I have, it's okay, hang on, I'm getting sidetracked. I'll get to the second. So, but um so I just, they were like, "Oh, nice jacket." I'm like, "Oh, thank you. Do you play?" And they were like, "Yeah, yeah." And one guy was like, "I haven't played much lately, but I'm excited to jump back in when there's new stuff."
Yeah, that
And
was
I'm like,
me.
"Cool." And I'm like, "Yeah, like what's your class or whatever?" And they told me what class they played and stuff. And they're like kind of like weirded out that I would ask such a specific and I'm just like, "Well, I work on the game." And they were like, "No shit." And I'm like, maybe I should. But he was like, "I was literally just playing Trials of Osiris." And I was like, my instinct was just like, "Okay." Like I just like, okay. I didn't make that. So like it's just like, okay, cool. Um and he was like, "What do you work on?" And I'm like, I I work on the space magic part.
Yeah,
Like I'm just like, I'm the worst person. I'm the worst Bungie
I
employee to find in the wild. I'm more like a deer in headlights. But I was just like, "Yeah, it's the space magic part." And they're like what? And I'm like, I made Banner of War for the Titan. They're like, "No." And I'm like, I guess, yeah, that one. But like also a lot of other people helped me make it. Like, um, it's always a little weird. But sometimes, by the way, Waverly, I hope you end up going flawless. But there's been a couple times I'll have like gone into random groups, like they'll do like the LFG kind of thing. Like, "Oh, I want to do this raid, but none of my friends are on." And so I'll just like join a group that's like posting online that they're looking for one person.
hmm
And I'll join, and then I'm like, "Yo, yeah, so how do you guys, how do you guys like this? Is it
How do you like
good,
this? How do
bad?"
you like, how do you
And
like
then
this
and then like
game?
they'll just tell you straight up how they feel, pretty candidly a lot of times. Um,
And you're like, well, actually,
no, but then like there's been a couple of groups where like I LFG'd with them, and then like they're like, "All right, cool, well, you knew what you were doing, so we're gonna add you, and then if we need another person, we'll hit you up." And like I've gone back and played with them a couple of times, and like I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I work at Bungie." And they're like, "Wait a second, what? We played with you this whole time, we didn't know you worked at Bungie, we've said these things?" And I'm like, "Uh-huh, yeah."
yeah, you're all on
It's
record.
just like,
You know?
yeah.
I'm gonna get you
But
banned.
nah, it's I feel a responsibility, like, um we talked about this a little bit too briefly. Like I uh I I working on a game is a dream come true. I always thought it was like an impenetrable black box, and
hmm
working on Destiny was like what I wanted to do. Um and I got very lucky through sheer circumstance, um to be able to get to where I am now. And it could have been any of those people that I've played with that love the game just as much as I do. Like they could do it.
hmm
Um, and it's just that like you can't Google how to do it, and that's sort of, I think, the problem, right? Like
Right.
there's no, like, your parents weren't game develop. I mean, maybe now at some point, there's a younger generation out there whose parents are game developers, but like there are, you can't ask your dad. You're like, "How do I? This is my dream. How do I do it?" Like
Yeah.
there wasn't an answer for me. And a lot of people I find, it's like they want to do it, or they think it's cool and they want to do it, and they just go, "Nah." Like, um I have a buddy who just retired from the military. He's like, I would love to do what you do. And I'm like, you can find a way to do it. You can find a way to get in. It's hard. Um, like the only thing I would say that I bring to the table is persistence. Like I
Hmm.
think it's like the only like real talent I have is that like I could be the most annoying person you'll ever meet because I have the ability to not leave you alone.
Hmm.
Um, and so like I think that's and so I do find it like important that I talk to players or fans and like try to just like not give them give away anything but keep the surprise. Like player empathy is you can't do this job without uh without having player empathy and try and it might be hard to hear that like you have to empathize with the crazy keyboard warrior on the other side of the screen that's like raging about something, but
Right.
like a designer, your job is to like identify like what's actually the problem. Because think about it like a doctor or like a doctor patient thing. Like I'm a hypochondriac, and when I go into the doctor office and I tell him the symptoms, like he's not actually listening to exactly what I say when I say I have this lump. I think it's cancer. And he's like, okay, I know. Like, but like, I can tell you how I feel, but I can't tell you what the solution is. Like,
Hmm.
a doctor won't listen to the patient for what the solution is because it's
Hmm.
up to them. And like, I think that's sort of the same thing. Like, when players like, uh, as a design, as a game designer, and even as a graphic designer, where it's like a graphic designer, it's like you get the brief and they're like, all right, I want a logo for this thing, and I want it to be exactly like that. Sometimes that works out, but like a lot of times, it's like you tell me what actually your feeling or your problem is, and
Hmm.
I will come up with the solution. And so a lot of times players are very good about pointing where it hurts.
Hmm.
They're not really good at telling you why it hurts
Right.
because the software is an impenetrable curtain to them. They
Hmm.
can't see behind the curtain. I
Hmm.
can, and I feel it's my job to advocate for those who can't see behind the curtain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people at Bungie take that part very seriously. That's like one of the reasons I love working at Bungie. Is like that's like at a game of this scale, like I don't know how we'd get stuff done otherwise if you didn't have player empathy.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, and I think that's a really good sort of philosophy to approach your, I mean, your base and see what's going on. I think that's super funny though that you do just jump into raids and you're like, hey, fellow kids.
Well, sometimes look, man, I need the drops. I need the loot drop. My friends like to say I have dev loot, but that's some horseshit because I like it took I don't know if this means anything to you, but it took me 45 tries to get Touch of Malice from Kingsfall, the raid, and I'm just like, yeah, dev loot my ass. Um, but
They make me grind even harder than y'all.
yeah. It's just like, but yeah, no, it's I thankfully I think was a Buried Bloodlines, the most recent exotic from the dungeon I ended up getting, I think in
Hmm.
like 20 something tries, which was pretty good for me. But um the yeah, I'll hop in with players. It's like they go like when players will leave work, leave stressful day, and they boot up the thing that I work on.
Hmm.
And I I find it vitally important that I work very hard so that their escapism is worth the time. Like it's the same thing in any relationship. Like uh I think it's a blessing me and my partner Brittany, like we get to live in the same time period and live together at this point in time.
Hmm.
And that's if that's not something you can respect, like if you like a player chooses to spend their very short amount of time in my game,
Hmm.
um that's invigorating. It should be invigorating.
Hmm.
Even if they get mad and they yell at you online a lot of times, it's like I think it's important that like the next day when I go to work and I think about like yeah, like there's so many people who last night had a shit day at work or shit day at home or something, and they found solace in shooting aliens.
Hmm.
Um, and I take that responsibility. Everyone I've ever met, any game designer that I've ever met that really has been successful has that sort of sentiment of like you could be hiking beautiful mountains, you could be having dinner on the waterfront, another beautiful human across from you, and then also times they're choosing to spend time in your piece of software, and like the most successful designers I think respect that fact.
Yeah, they're like us. Like, no way, Jose. We're gonna be going on raids. That's what we're doing. We're not going on any hikes.
Listen, I was born 100 years too early, man. I'm saying I was meant to go on the alien hunting raids. Like, listen, I was meant to be part of Helldivers, but I was born 100
But
years
you
too
you
early.
now you're born to you're born to
Make space magic,
yeah, space magic with Sammy, your doggy.
my tripod.
Yeah,
Actually, you know what's funny? Today, I didn't even realize when I texted you earlier. Today is our 2 year anniversary gotcha day.
yeah, no, I saw on the gram, Brittany posted something when I was eating my dinner, and
Yeah.
I thought that was
We
so cute.
realized afterwards because told Brian, I was like, I was telling Jesse that I was sending him pictures of the dog, and she's like, oh, and then she's like, wait a second, today's gotcha day, and I'm like, it is, and then I jumped on the dog.
Aww.
uh,
Then we gave him candy for being
yeah,
good boy.
she's great.
She's a good boy. She's a good girl.
Yeah, well, either or, she will respond. But
She just likes the excitement in your voice. That's
yeah.
all.
Well, she's, you like, oh, I have anxiety. I'll get a dog and it's gonna help calm me down. And then you get the dog with anxiety, and then you just look at each other like, uh-oh.
Oh, somebody's got to figure this out.
Yeah, we're all not okay in here. Um, but no, she's Sammy's been we got her she had a lot of health issues, a lot of trauma issues, and we
Same.
she was supposed to have been spayed, and she wasn't.
hmm
We had the first 6 months we had her, she went through her first heat, which was like, oh, okay. Um,
You're like, wait a minute.
yeah,
I thought.
well, right, yeah. She also she had a lot of health issues. She came from Texas, and she had a lot of health issues, and she ended up being on this long-term medicine that ended up was not supposed to be prescribed long term. This is crazy. I'm sorry. I know it's not part of video game stuff, but um
No, dog
she
stuff is good. This is
it's
good
a crazy
content.
story. She was on this long-term medicine that shouldn't have been prescribed long term, and we didn't know any better. She's our first pet, and I feel horrible, but she ended up becoming paralyzed.
Oh my goodness.
She already has 3 legs.
Sammy.
Um and we were in this, it was Thanksgiving 2 years ago. So Thanksgiving 22. And I was carrying her, and she was going to the bathroom all over me because she couldn't walk or move, and I was trying to carry her outside just so and we didn't know what was going on. We thought it was really bad, all this stuff. And we brought her in, um, and ended up being this medicine because we were just like, we don't know what's wrong because it seems like a very benign medicine. And after like being in the hospital the whole time, we're just like, I don't know, like she is taking this thing, like could that do it? And the doctor was like, actually, maybe. And he calls like poison control center and was like, maybe if you try this, like I forgot, it was like some antidepressant, and like they gave her the liquid version of this antidepressant, and immediately the next morning we got a call, and she's like, yeah, she's starting to move her legs again. And we were just like shocked. It's just like, she's been through so much. They pulled a bullet, or like a piece of shrapnel out of her
Aw,
leg when
Sammy.
she got spayed, that somebody had shot her back in Texas. She just kind of looked like a coyote a little bit.
She
But not
do.
not that you should be shooting coyote, but Texas, I guess. And then so she's been through a lot. And so now we just I was like, oh, a dog will help my anxiety. Now it's like, well, maybe we just give you the whole couch, and then it's just your world. We're just living in it.
Yeah, we're just living in Sammy's world. There,
She's a sweetheart. Yeah.
there's your new indie project, Sammy's World.
She yeah. But no, it's for she's just a good reminder of no matter how much adversity and trauma you've been through, to just like just be happy to be here.
Yeah, and
Is
get liquid SSRIs or whatever she got.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it was literally like a regular, like I can't remember. I remember hearing, going like, why the fuck would that work? But apparently, because the medicine was altering her brain chemistry, so that she couldn't form the
Uh,
connections to
the
move her
synapses,
legs.
yeah, oh, why
Yeah, and
interesting.
so the antidepressant calmed them down and
Oh,
allowed the connections to reform.
they just gave her Baja Blast, and they're like, yeah, we gave her some.
Listen, that you give me Baja Blast, I'll feel better. But um, no, Sammy, yeah, she's a doll.
Oh, good
She's an
girl.
honorary game dev girl.
Bungie honorary employee.
She's actually been to Bungie. We brought her a couple weeks ago, a
Did
couple
she?
weekends ago. I had to run into the office to grab something, and you can't really like. I mean, you have to have approval and stuff. But it was off hours, and so I was like, all right, Brittany, because Brittany and the dog were with me. I'm like, you guys could just the first floor is like there's nothing on the first. There's nothing like revealing on the first floor.
Right. It's not
Um,
not a Master Chief statue.
no, there's a giant sparrow actually.
Oh, cool.
Um, and a bunch of like merch that we've made over the years, and there's like a big playtest lab that I guess I don't know, it's covered. But Brittany, I was like, oh well, there's a bathroom in here. We could use the bathroom. I'm just gonna run upstairs and then I'll meet you guys down here. Um, and Sammy had to be brought back outside because she started howling at the giant sparrow,
Oh,
the vehicle in Destiny
yeah.
that you
Yeah,
ride.
yeah, yeah. The
Which is
light thing.
weird. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know what it is about this
It's,
thing that's making you howl, but
it's
okay.
just a big speeder bike. I
Yeah,
mean,
she's not really a howler either. It's just like maybe she liked the echo because it's a little cavernous.
oh yeah, maybe.
Um,
Hey,
but
can you sit on the Sparrow? Or no? Is
I
it
mean,
like
I could. It's 1 to 1. I'll be fired, but
yeah.
like it's 1 to 1.
Yeah, we fired. Damn it,
There
Danny.
there
Stop.
is a giant fallen captain too,
Ooh,
running
that's
around.
cool. That's running around.
Okay, he doesn't really run. Well, he's on wheels.
He's on okay.
No, I don't know.
What goes on over there?
Um, no, it's the office every so I don't go in too often. I should go in more. It's just like unplugging the laptop and plugging it back in. It's a lot. But every time I go in, it's a little different. So um like stuff's moved around. And I'm
hmm
like, oh, okay.
Wait, do they have any like Oni stuff either in there? I was just thinking
I
about.
I'm sure I haven't been everywhere. Like it's probably somewhere. I don't know. It's kind of big. It
Speaking of Rockstar published Bungie games, Oni from it was the 2000 probably. I think it was right before Halo, I think.
Yeah, I think it was
Because Halo CE was 2001, and I think hold
or two, right?
on. Oni game. Uh no, that was 2001. And I thought Halo CE was 2001 as well.
No, Halo Combat Evolved was 2001.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
November.
01.
And what a time to be alive. And Oni was 2001 as well, but that was I guess that was before the whole Microsoft gotcha moment. Yeah, January 2001 it came out. So, interesting.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Rockstar published, Bungie developed. What a time, man.
world was vastly different then.
Yeah, I know. Um,
I don't even know how many employees they had back then. I can't imagine it was many.
they probably had like 40 people. I can't I just game development didn't require that many people. I know.
And just yeah, well,
Even
lot more people had had much broader skill sets at the
yeah,
time.
well they had like Marty O'Donnell doing like voice. He had like his dad's do a voice for something, and then they like had Marty helping with the level design, even though he was the composer. So like it seemed like
Yeah.
everybody was doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. Now we're
and
all highly specialized.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, what a time, man. I mean, even the first Halo was pretty ragtag, like how they got that, off the ground and out the door and shipped and everything. It's just
Standing on the shoulders of giants.
that's right, man. And what a time. What a time. I love that time. Great time. Okay, so we'll kind of wind this all down. Let's talk a little bit. So aspects. Into the Light is coming out.
Sure.
And or it's out actually. By the time you hear this, it is out.
Yes.
Uh
Hmm?
so Into the Light, what are you super pumped about, like for players to see? Think what about it that you're really excited to have players have in their hands now?
I think just like the onslaught activity
hmm
that is coming out is pretty cool. I got to play it in dev. Also, if you hear Sammy barking, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We love Sammy.
Um, there's another German Shepherd running around.
Sammy's like, get
And
fucked.
yeah, she's like husky and shepherd, so other huskies and shepherds are her mortal enemies. Um, but yeah, the onslaught activity is it's a cool like horde tower defense style activity. And
PvE.
PvE, yeah, and by the time you hear this, players will have seen it, maybe they'll have played it. Um, and you know, I whenever we do like a new activity type, we do them every season. Um, as someone who failed the activity design interview, I'm always excited to see what they come up with.
Hmm.
Um, and we've shown some of the rewards you can get from them. Um, the Midnight Coup hand cannon, which is a favorite of mine. I'm very
Hmm.
excited to see that come back. So yeah, I'm excited for Into the Light. And it's a nice like setup for the spike of Final Shape coming in June. I think is it's a good way to start gearing yourself up. The new loot that comes with Into the Light, nice to refresh your arsenal or whatever before you go into the big expansion.
Yeah, that's and it's a big expansion. You can pre-order it right now, and it's a biggie. So,
It's
um,
true. The end of
yeah.
the original Destiny 1 saga. The reason I started on this journey. And now,
Oh man,
well,
how do you feel about that?
uh weird. I feel weird.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't feel real a lot of the times. I had a lot of imposter syndrome about a lot of it, but um I mean I still do at times. Like I'm just a guy.
Hmm.
But
Just a dude.
I'm just a dude with a keyboard. But um no, it feels like I you know, we I it feels like just weird to be on this side of the curtain at the end of a 10 years where when I booted up and went, this is what I want to make, and then to manage to do it before it was not over, but before the well, I guess this would be my third major expansion.
Hmm.
Um but everyone has its own energy, and every expansion feels um like it's the biggest pinnacle or the biggest monument that you have managed to make, and then the next one comes along.
Yeah, and then yeah, and then they're already writing the next thing or whatever. So
Yeah, that's not my level. I don't know what's going on.
yeah.
But the Intel Light's is like setup for Final Shape. And I think for me as a player, or I guess like what's weird, it if I could talk to my younger self about it, as much as I said that this was my goal, I don't know how much I believed it.
Hmm.
And I feel like if I had told myself in 2014 that like, yeah, in 10 years, uh, you'd be a designer on the Final Shape,
Hmm.
he'd be like, you're a fucking liar, and why are you in my room?
Yeah.
But
Who are you?
yeah. So like I don't he'd be like, why do you look like that?
Yeah. Oh my God. Where did you
Uh
get with the
did teaching at Purchase really destroy you like this?
Is that my villain arc? What happened?
But it is actually. Sorry, no spoilers here, but that was the worst job I've ever had. So I loved my students. I
I
hated everything else.
I liked going to purchase. I thought that was a good
Hey,
experience.
it's not the same.
It's not the same anymore.
No,
Oh no.
no. Purchase is
What did they do to it?
well. What was your major?
Literature.
Oh, uh,
Humanities. Yeah.
yeah, maybe that's actually probably better now. But in terms of the conservatories, um, it's no bueno now. They just the funding's not the same.
Aw.
They used to be on the cutting edge, but now, no one's really retired or left, and so they haven't gotten new blood in really. They've tried, like, there are people on the ground and trying to do the right thing, but um, I think admin has really dropped the ball, and I have no problem saying that publicly. Purchase was a an exercise in self-destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like it was who was who I couldn't have I was like I knew I knew when I went home for like when the pandemic hit and I went home, I was the last time I was going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was like I won't because they're like, oh, after the pandemic, once it eases and we all do that, I'm like, I'm not gonna. You make whatever plans you want. I won't be here. So
I'm gonna be I'm gonna be making space wizards throw balls of energy. So you just watch it, buddy.
yeah, I was determined. I was gonna leave no matter what happened. I was
Right.
gonna. Brittany was working at another school at the time, and I was like, maybe I could work there,
Mm-hmm.
or uh, I, at that point I'd also been a manager or like a not man like a key holder of a coffee shop
Mm-hmm.
during like right before grad school, and I was like, I will go back and work there. Like I can't do this anymore with these people. I
And
can't.
you probably would have made about the same amount of money too if you
I
decided.
I would have. But I wouldn't have gotten loan forgiveness, which is the only thing that like sucked because the 10-year like student loan forgiveness for working technically purchase you'd be working for the state of New York, which is a government
Hmm.
organization. So I would have gotten my loans forgiven if I had stayed, and I had a 10-year track position.
Whoa.
So I left a year before my 10-year review started.
Hey, look how it worked out though, Danny.
I know, I
It's
know.
good, some good stuff.
Yeah, it's no. I was when I left my tenure track position with student loan forgiveness for Bungie, I took a like $17,000 a year pay cut to
Mm-hmm.
do it
Mm-hmm.
because contractors also don't make a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a risk that I was like I had to and I talked to Brittany about it too. It was just like this was going to be my last job application. I had mentioned that. It's like, this would be the last time I apply to Bungie. If I don't get it, then I'm done. I'm moving on with my life. And if I do get it, I'm going to do everything I can to keep the job or to move up and move in and get the full-time status. And if that doesn't work, then they can't take it away from me. Right. Like
Right.
I'll still have contributed. Like I'll still have like the guy in 2014 he still achieved the goal in the broad sense of like I worked on Destiny and they'll
Mm-hmm.
never take that away from me.
Yeah.
And that was my goal was just like live like there was no tomorrow on it. Like I said, the only thing I really bring to the table is persistence. um
And then you
so
got there and they're like, you want to do more? And you're like, yeah, sure. I'll do more.
yeah, they're like, oh man, this guy's got a big mouth and doesn't stop talking and keeps inserting himself in the meetings he's not supposed to be in. I guess he's supposed to be here. um you know so
Incredible.
I just became part of the furniture. Like they're like, I guess he comes with the house. I
You're
don't.
like, yeah, yeah, well, we can't get rid of them, like, really.
Yeah,
So we'll just keep
yeah.
them around, keep paying them, I guess.
But no,
Uh,
yeah,
um, so yeah, I think that's all awesome stuff. This was really fun. I think you said like, and I think you made it clear, and you'd like it to be that the big takeaway from all this is that you were a guy who was very much interested in a thing, and then you just pursued the thing, and through very not traditional avenues, you ended up being able to do the thing. That's the best way I could put it.
yeah. The
I
thing is
think,
like,
yeah.
yeah, the walk away from it, I think, is like there's no path is traditional, especially with games.
Mm-hmm.
With games, it's a young industry relatively, and if you want to do something, you should just start doing it. It doesn't really matter what kind of game you make or how it gets published, or even if it gets published. Just making games allows you to say that you did make them, just like writing, right? It's like the best time to start writing was yesterday. And you don't have to publish it to be a writer.
Right.
And I think it's important for people to know it's like if you want to make games, if you want to do this kind of job, the important thing is to just start doing it in any way, shape, or form, and that experience will translate into some valuable form that you can use to try to get to a position like mine. And it's also about finding your people. Like I intrinsically love Destiny and understood Destiny, and it was a good spot for me to be. Um, and there's other studios with other genres and other things, and you find your people. Because you can't be so obscure that you like this one thing that nobody has ever heard of. Like this doesn't like your people are out there.
Mm-hmm.
So just be persistent on trying to find them and be persistent in being curious about how it's made and just start making it. Does not matter how finished it is. Like I can't stress that enough. Just make anything. Even if it's just like, oh, I recreated the Mario jump in Unity from NES Mario. Like it
Hmm.
just learning how to do that will change. Like it puts you way ahead of anybody else who just like thinks about it. Um, just yeah, those are like just so it could be anybody. It doesn't have to be me. It could be anybody that sits in this chair.
Hmm.
Um, so just best time to get started was yesterday.
That's right. Stephen King approach. Thousand words a day, whatever he does.
Oh
Um,
God.
I know that guy's a machine. Also, just be like Danny and just sit in meetings and don't remove yourself. Just stay there.
It helps if you have a catchy like Danny Nanny kind of rhymes. People like, oh, who's that weirdo with the funny name? But yeah, maybe I mean, yeah, maybe
Yeah,
that's
maybe.
that's also my blessing was I had a
Yeah,
funny name.
yeah. Like maybe, yeah. Change your name. Maybe do that. Burn your fingerprints off. Start a
Yeah.
new
I mean, yeah, or make it rhyme or make it a pun. I don't know. Like
life.
uh, you could do a lot of things, but no, it's just being visible enough that people think you're supposed to be there is a fake it till you make it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, a lot. My own personal career path has been a lot of that too, and it's been great. I mean, I think it's so funny because I kind of see us as sort of like two people who have done sort of kind of similar things in a sort of kind of similar way and ended up in
Hmm.
really good positions with the thing that they really love, and they are still enthused about it, which is, you
Hmm.
know, a thing that can happen is that you do work in or with or in the, um, industry that you like or love, or in the subsect of what that is, and then it burns you out and you hate it forever. But
Can happen.
it can happen. And it can happen to anyone. But I mean, I think it's really cool to see like myself and you sort of in these industries, and really still sort of smitten by it, even though it's just like it is work, but we are kind of smitten by how cool it is to be doing the thing that uh brings us joy, and we can try to help other people somehow in our way, improve someone's day-to-day life. So I think that's cool.
No, I agree, and I appreciate getting to talk with you about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Danny, do you have anything to plug before we go? Do you want to talk? Do you want to talk about your
Uh,
Substack or any link anything? I mean, we're gonna put stuff in my post. I'll link
yeah.
stuff. But if there's anything that you just want to be like, yo, like check out my uh SoundCloud 420 blunts
uh,
underscore.
everything about me can be found at dannynanny.net. Like if you want to find my Twitter, my Substack, my Spotify, my photography that's on Unsplash, like everything I've ever done is available through Danny www.dannynanny.net. So we could just link that too.
Sweet. We love it. Condense it like that. Well,
And Final
cool.
Shape comes out June 4th. Sorry.
Sorry, Tuesday comes to June 4th.
I totally
Don't
forgot about that.
don't fire Danny.
Yeah. I It's not really this is not meant to this was not a promotional thing. Like Bungie, like we're not this is not part of any sort of Bungie
Yeah,
promotional thing, but
Danny's
I
Danny's paying me $500 to do this.
yeah, I did work on it, I guess, so maybe play it.
Yeah, yeah, we're
Or anything
actually
else I've worked
yeah,
on, please play it.
we're just helping the corporations. We're like, yeah, and we're doing a media tie over crossover event. And yeah,
I mean, I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Danny. Thank you so much.